Hello, my name's Darren Holmes, and in this video series I want to talk to you about programming the Pololu P-25K50 and 45K50 microcontrollers using MPLAB and the XC8 C compiler. So in this video, all I want to do is introduce you to microcontrollers. You can see on the Pololu P-25K50, we do have a microcontroller IC, and it's from Microchip, and it's an 18F25K50 microcontroller. To this board, Pololu has added a voltage regulator, 3 surface mount resistors, and 3 different LEDs. We have a red, a green, and a yellow LED. We also have a USB connector. On the 45K50, you can see the microcontroller is a PIC18F25K50, and this is manufactured by Microchip. And to this particular board, we have the 3 LEDs, but we've also included a reset switch. We do have voltage regulators, but it also has a switching power supply on here. So we can actually run this board at a higher voltage, and it will step the voltage down to what's required for our microcontroller. I've put together a beginner's reference manual for you, and you can see I've revised it for winter 2020. So this manual is basically notes on programming the P-25K50 and the 45K50 microcontrollers using MPLAB 10 and the XC8C compiler. Down here I've given you a table showing you the differences between the 25K50 and the 45K50. Basically, we have the difference in the number of user I/O lines, analog inputs. The 45K50 has a reset button and can operate up to 36 volts. It has a switching step-down power supply that's good for 500 milliamps. So providing your projects do not exceed 500 milliamps, you can actually plug some external items onto the 45K50 board. In my reference manual, I have a table of contents, so you can see I have a quick start guide for using MPLAB 10, a quick start guide for actually using the 25 or 45K50, entering bootloader mode, and how to use PowerShell. I have a series of sections in here on definitions, which I've collected from Wikipedia, a section on flowcharting, some C fundamentals, and then we talk about variables, integers, arrays, and strings, literal constants, ASCII, and some operators, which are math functions. Then I start talking about the I/O ports specific to a microcontroller, and then we get into some C programming, comments, the include directive, macros. Now printf and scanf are 2 functions for outputting data or inputting data from the keyboard. They're not available on a microcontroller, but we use them so that we can do some demonstrations using an online C compiler. I also talk about statements specific to controlling C programs. We get into some functions, how to use an LCD display on our microcontroller, how to use the analog inputs, and I've put together some practical exercises and some projects that you can do. So you can see my first section is on how to use MPLAB. It's basically a quick start guide that's being updated for this year and the software that we have installed on the computers in the college. I have a section on reference materials, and I'll have a separate video for you on how to download the files that we're going to be needing. From Microchip, we need to download MPLAB 10 and the XC8 compiler, and from Pololu, we need the USB bootloader utility. If you're using the college computers, this software is already being installed for you. But if you would like to continue your studies at home, I need to show you how to download these and where to find them on the internet. I have a section in here on using PowerShell because when we use the USB bootloader, we do have to do it from the command prompt, and most computers have had the command prompt locked out from them, so we do still have access to PowerShell, which will give us access to the command prompt. So I need you to know how to use that. My section on definitions came from Wikipedia, and I highly recommend that if you want additional information that you go to Wikipedia and look up their definitions, and they've written several pages on each of the items that I've specified here. I've put together a section on flowcharting. It's important to document your programs so that we can both understand what you've written as far as code is concerned. You'll notice there's sections in the textbook that have been grayed out. These are actual examples that you can type into an online compiler, or you can use something like code blocks or dev C++. So you can actually try out the code and see what it does. It's important to understand that the reference material does come from the data sheet for the PIC18F25 or 45K50 families. So we will be talking about some of the sections on the data sheet that does come from Microchip. I'm going to be showing you how to interface an LCD display to the microcontroller. So you're going to need some reference materials, and these are of course of data sheets. So you need to get these from the manufacturer. And then we have the practical exercises. So they're fairly simple in nature. So the first exercise, we're just going to turn on a red LED. Second exercise, we're going to monitor the input switch. So each of these exercises builds on material that we're going to learn. So I'll have a separate video for each of these exercises, but you can see exercise 1 is simply to turn on a red LED. I show you the algorithm for it. I give you the code so that you can put it into your microcontroller and see how it operates. I also give you the flow chart for the program. So, as I have introduced new commands into my exercises, I needed to go out on the internet and find some reference sections for you. So, in the case of the if statement, I give you the syntax for it. I give you an example piece of code that you can actually type into an online compiler, or you can type it into something like dev C++. And at the end of each reference section, I tell you where the reference material comes from. So Microchip Developer, Help, if you go to their particular website, there'll be more details on each of these instructions that you can read up on. And then lastly, in the reference manual, I've given you some projects that you can try on your own. I do not give you the code for these, but I do give you some details on how you can approach the program. So to conclude this introduction to the XC8 Basics Beginner's Reference Manual, I just want to go over the parts required to do the exercises in the manual. You'll notice that I have labeled my source. So from digikey.ca, I have put the part number for the LCD module, the quantity, and the price. Now these prices are as of September 24th, 2019. Keep in mind most of these places order direct from the USA, and the Canadian dollar does fluctuate quite a bit on a daily basis with the US dollar. So you can see I have the LCD module, and we need a 14-pin header connector that needs to be soldered on the LCD module. We have a single position, single toggle switch that we have to solder onto the P-Star 45K50 board in order to put it into bootloader mode. We also have some LEDs, some resistors, a potentiometer, and an analog temperature sensor. From Abra Electronics, I ordered the USB-A to micro B cable. A lot of people might have this on their Android cell phone. It's not the USB-C connector that's fairly recent. It's the older USB-A to micro B cable. And then from the robot shop, I ordered the P-Star45K50 and a thin speaker.
So when you get your parts kit, it's going to come in a bag similar to this. And inside the bag, you'll have a smaller bag with the USB cable in it, and the other bag will contain the parts list as well as all your components. So opening the parts bag, you can see I'm going to give you the same parts list that I just went over with you. We have the thin speaker, we have the LCD module, and soldered in for your convenience is the 14-pin header. We have the 4 yellow LEDs, the 4 red LEDs, and the 4 green LEDs. We also have 12 330 ohm resistors, 1 200 ohm resistor. We have the analog temperature sensor. Do not confuse this with a transistor. This is actually a temperature sensor. It's just in a package that looks like a transistor. I usually include a piece of foam just to keep your pins from getting bent up in the parts kit. So on this piece of foam you should have the P-Star45K50 microcontroller board from Pololu. We also can see here that we have a potentiometer. This is a 10K ohm potentiometer. The switch is already soldered onto the board for your convenience. So this is what the microcontrollers look like when I order them in. They come in these little plastic wraps. So the 45K50 and the 25K50 have to be assembled before I give them to you. So taking the 45K50 out of the wrapper, you can see that there are no connecting pins or switch to put it into the bootloader mode. So those have to be soldered on for you. So in this package, they do provide you with the pins that need to be inserted into the bottom of the board. So they just slide in. So once they've slid in there, they don't hold on by themselves, so I have to solder each of these pins in individually so that you can put them into your breadboard. So the next item that we need to put onto the board is the switch so that we can put our P-Star45K50 into bootloader mode. So the holes are at the bottom of the board and the switch just kind of slides in, and the two holes that we're going to be using, if you look at the bottom of the board, we're going to put the switch between VDD and RB6. Now if you've just purchased one of these at home, you can probably get away with just putting the switch in. You don't need to solder it. It'll probably make good contact for you. But for my students, I actually like to solder it into place so it's ready to go. Now below this video, I will put a link to the parts list required for the exercises, and I'll also put a link in for the XC8 Basics version 3 Beginner's Reference Manual, and you're more than welcome to use those materials. Now in our next video, I'm going to show you where to get the software required to program this device and how to install it onto your PC at home. Please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of my new videos as they become available.